fighting Usyk again. That's a tough fight. That Usyk guy is talented. He's so talented. He's so small for a heavyweight, too. He's nonstop movement and his footwork and everything. It's so different than anybody else. Joshua didn't know what to do with him. He's like, where is this guy going to be when I'm throwing punches? He's a heavyweight, and the heavyweights were never really that good in terms of that kind of technique. It's like you need it at like middleweight and light heavyweight because everyone's super talented and technical. Lomachenko and Usyk were trained by the same guy. They were both trained by Lomachenko's father. So they both have extreme technique.
He wants to stay on, and if you want to stay on, then I want to see it be the next man up. That's what I want. If you are the unified champion, I don't want it to be a case of giving belts away. Like, okay, Wardy, you can take that. Cabello, you can hang on to my WBC. Who wants the IBF? I want it to be next man up. Next man up is Cabello or Wardley. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand if he were fighting Deontay Wilder and there were no challenges. Like, okay, he's cleaned out the division. I mean, there's no one really kind of, do what you want to do. But there are challenges. Again, I just mentioned two, right? And those are two big ones. So it is disappointing.
What is this bronze bomber mentality? Is it a real thing? And if it is, does he need to get it back? Is he capable of getting it back at this stage in his career after two, performances against Zhilei Zhang, against Joseph Parker that were just not reflective of what we recognise to be Deontay Wilder? Can he do that? And if he does he have any chance against Alexander Usyk?
He's got every chance against Alexander Usyk. He could
pack it in, Joe.
No, but listen, because he's such a dangerous puncher. I'm not saying it. Listen, if I was a gambling man, I wouldn't say he would beat Usyk, and I don't think he would beat Usyk. I don't think he will beat Usyk. But him out of all the other heavyweights, because he's such a dangerous puncher, this guy sounds to be rejuvenated in some ways. When I spoke to him some, I started a YouTube channel, and he gave me a lot of time, and he said to me he had a lot of...
Now start promoting other stuff on YouTube.
Oh no, I'm not doing that. I just thought I'd throw it in.
All
no,
right.
but he said that he had a lot of personal problems, as Spenny already alluded to. And now he's dealt with these personal problems and managed to get a hold of everything. And he's got a tick box. He's put everything in his box and everything in its space. He's got a clear head now. So he might go into this fight with Usyk, full of vigor and determination.
Alexander Usyk just called out Deontay Wilder, and the boxing world is absolutely losing its mind. But not for the reasons you'd expect. While Usyk sits there calm as ice, knowing he's arguably the most skilled pound-for-pound fighter on the planet, the real drama is happening behind the scenes. Because this isn't just about two heavyweights throwing hands. This is about money, politics, and a fight that half the boxing world thinks is completely unfair. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why some people are calling this potential matchup the biggest controversy in heavyweight boxing right now.
Could you tell them that he had that kind of power? Who? That would translate into pros? Who? Wilder.
Wilder's beast power, bro.
In the amateurs, yeah?
No, but Wilder's one of the hardest hitting heavyweights I've ever seen.
What does he need to do to beat Usyk?
Hit him hard. Hit him, bro. That's it. Knock him out.
Here's where it gets wild. The second Wilder heard his name mentioned alongside Usyk's, he didn't hesitate for even a microsecond. No negotiations, no "let me think about it." No demands about money or location. Just an immediate, emphatic yes. And that should tell you everything you need to know about where Wilder's career stands right now. This is a man who once demanded $50 million paydays, who walked away from fights over contract disputes, who had promoters begging him to sign deals. Now he's jumping at the chance to face the most dangerous heavyweight on the planet without even asking about the terms. Think about that for a second. Either Wilder's completely lost his mind, or he knows something we don't. Because from the outside, this looks like career suicide.
Nick has announced he wants to fight you, Deontay Wilder, the Bronze Bomber, one of the greatest of this generation in the heavyweight division. Do you want to fight Usyk? Is that the fight that's in negotiation?
Man, when he said that, in my mind, I already said I accept, but I haven't publicly said it. So I'm gonna look right here in this camera and say, Usyk, I appreciate the opportunity, and I accept.
But here's the kicker. The boxing experts aren't buying into the hype at all. Guys like Adi Oladipo and Gareth Davies, who have been covering this sport for decades, are basically treating this like a glorified sparring session. They're not even pretending it's competitive. Sure, they'll acknowledge that Wilder still has that right hand, that he can still separate your soul from your body with one clean shot. But here's what's really telling. They're talking about Wilder's recent knockouts like they broke something fundamental inside him. Not just physically, but mentally. When you've been dropped and stopped multiple times by guys who aren't even close to Usyk's level, how do you convince yourself you can handle the best technical boxer in the heavyweight division? These aren't just losses anymore. They're evidence that the Wilder we once feared might be gone forever.
Just like that. So I think that's why he puts himself, I think, in the perfect position for if Usyk Wilder collapses, and I'm hearing that fight has a bit of a problem, then I think Kabayel puts himself in great position for it.
Well, if the WBC allow that fight to go on, I think at the moment, of all the heavyweights you mentioned there, Deontay's at 13 with the WBC right now. So it is viable for Alexander Usyk to have a voluntary against him. I think behind the scenes, I don't think Mauricio Suleiman has any issue with that. I'm hearing
no one wants it financially. That's the risk. No one wants to put up the money for it. And it can't, like, obviously Usyk wants to go and do it in America, which basically means PBC, I guess, or one of those rogue promotions. And unless they've got 20, 30 million to spare, it's a difficult fight to...
Now get this. Gareth Davies isn't even trying to hide his confidence about how this fight plays out. He's not talking about a competitive war or a back-and-forth battle. He's describing systematic destruction. According to Davies, Usyk's movement and boxing IQ would pick Wilder apart so methodically that it wouldn't even be entertaining. And here's the scary part for Wilder fans. Davies thinks Usyk would do it smarter and more efficiently than Tyson Fury did. Remember those Fury fights? Wilder got outboxed, outmuscled, and ultimately stopped. Now imagine facing someone with even better footwork, even sharper timing, and even more precise combinations. Davies is basically saying that if Wilder survives the first few rounds, he'll spend the rest of the fight getting picked apart like a heavy bag. That's not analysis. That's a prediction of complete domination.
I get that, and I get the fact that Usyk has been paid an enormous amount of money, and I see he stepped away from Riyadh season. Maybe he's trying to leverage with them. Like you say, if the fundamentals of the promotion don't work, we aren't going to get it. It doesn't surprise me that Lawrence Okoli was there. He's the #1 challenger to Kabayel's interim title, and Usyk holding the title. And Tony Yoka's not in there at those rankings at the moment. Filip Hrgović is at 5. So, you know, do we want to see Kabayel and Okoli? I think Kabayel wins that. But Okoli's a problem for everyone as well, in the way that he fights. And again, he's the guy with 2 bricks in his hand. That's all he is. And that's what he is. So it's a fascinating...
But wait, it gets even more complicated when you follow the money. Adeola Depot broke down the real reason this fight is stalled, and it has nothing to do with boxing politics or mandatory challengers. It's pure business calculation. On one side, you've got Usyk, the undisputed champion who rightfully wants the biggest stage and the biggest payday possible. The man cleaned out the cruiserweight division, moved up, and became undisputed at heavyweight. He's earned the right to cash in. But on the flip side, promoters are looking at Wilder's recent performances and seeing a massive financial risk. This is a guy who looked completely shot in his last few fights. Flat, hurt, and honestly embarrassing compared to the bronze bomber who terrorized the division for years. So now you've got investors being asked to pump tens of millions of dollars into promoting a fight where one of the main attractions might get knocked out in the first round. Not by landing his famous right hand, but by getting completely outclassed and stopped. That's not a boxing match. That's potentially the most expensive highlight reel in sports history.
That's maybe the roadblock it's having at the moment. And if you're Turkey, the last couple of Wilder performances, you got knocked out in one and looked really bad in the other. I mean, are you going to want to put up the money for it? So I think that's the issue with that fight now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember describing the Zhilei Zhang knockout of Deontay Wilder like him being run over by a herd of wildebeest, because that's what it felt like at the time. Yeah, I just remember Zhang charging across the ring he looked like a herd of wildebeest while he was doing it, you know. And he it was like a cartoon. He flattened Deontay Wilder, didn't he? And they literally had to scrape.
And here's where the controversy really heats up. Critics like D are absolutely furious about the timing and what they see as a complete betrayal of boxing's merit-based system. His argument is simple but powerful. Usyk, as champion, should be facing the next legitimate contender who actually earned their shot through consistent wins and staying active. Fighters like Ajit Kabyal and Joe Joyce have been grinding, taking tough fights, and building their cases the right way. Meanwhile, Wilder gets to skip the line entirely based on name recognition from battles he fought years ago. D sees this as everything wrong with modern boxing. Instead of rewarding the hungry contenders who have been proving themselves month after month, we're handing opportunities to faded legends who might not even belong in the ring with elite competition anymore. It's like letting a retired quarterback start in the Super Bowl because he was great a decade ago. The sport is supposed to be about who's the best right now, not who used to be famous.
Wants to stay on, and if you want to stay on, then I want to see it be the next man up. That's what I want. If you are the unified champion, I don't want it to be a case of giving belts away. Like, okay, Wilder, you can take that. Kabyal, you can hang on to my WBC. Who wants the IBF? I want it to be next man up. Next man up is Kabyal or Wardley. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand if he were fighting Deontay Wilder and there were no challenges. Like, okay, he's cleaned out the division. I mean, there's no one really kind of, do what you want to do. But there are challenges. Again, I just mentioned two, right? And those are two big ones. So it is disappointing.
Here's what's really telling about how far Wilder has fallen. Adeola Depot didn't mince words when breaking down why this fight feels so underwhelming to hardcore boxing fans. He pointed out that everything scary about Wilder exists in the past tense. The explosive knockouts, the intimidating presence, the aura of danger, it's all based on highlight reels from years ago, not anything we've seen recently. Meanwhile, Usyk is still operating at an absolutely elite level, still improving, still finding new ways to dominate world-class opposition. The gap between them isn't just about skill anymore. It's about where they are in their careers. One guy is peaking while the other is clearly declining. That's not a recipe for competitive drama. That's a recipe for a one-sided beatdown that might be hard to watch. And for fans who remember when Wilder was genuinely terrifying, seeing him get systematically dismantled by Usyk might be more depressing than entertaining.
And it's disappointing that he's fighting Wilder because, again, let's be very frank and honest about this. That's only Wilder by name. That's not Deontay Wilder in terms of ability anymore. Deontay Wilder just not that guy. Hasn't been that guy for 3 or 4 years. So
But hold up, because Sean Zittel offers a completely different perspective that actually makes a lot of sense. He argues that calling out Wilder isn't about current rankings or who deserves what. It's about respect for what the man contributed to heavyweight boxing over his entire career. Yeah, Wilder isn't the same explosive force he used to be. Yeah, he's taken significant damage in those brutal wars with Fury. But here's Zittel's point. Wilder spent years carrying the heavyweight division in America when it was basically dead. He brought excitement, knockouts, and mainstream attention back to the sport when nobody else could. So maybe, just maybe, offering him one last shot at glory isn't about current form. Maybe it's about honoring a legend who gave everything to entertain fans and elevate the division. Think about it like this. Michael Jordan wasn't the best player in the league during his second comeback with the Wizards, but he'd earned the right to play as long as he wanted because of what he'd accomplished. Zittel sees this potential Wilder fight the same way, a farewell tour for a heavyweight legend, regardless of whether he can still compete at the highest level.
Alexander Usyk, of course, the pound-for-pound great and undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Forget whether he has 3 or 4 belts right now. He's the undisputed heavyweight champion. Recently made some headlines about fighting Deontay Wilder, actually calling him out as the next guy he wants to fight. Me and you covered Deontay's last fight afterwards against Tyrell Herndon, right? And we both were happy to see Deontay back in the ring, getting a victory. But we said at best, he needs a lengthy rebuild against a succession of opponents to even consider fighting at the championship level. Or another scenario, he should just retire, because Deontay is clearly not the explosive, snappy, fearsome fighter that he was at his apex years ago. So this comes as a bit of a surprise. All I'm going to say is, no fighter is above the critique, and there's a lot going on.
Radio Rahim jumped in with another angle that's hard to ignore. Even if Wilder isn't operating at peak performance, even if his reflexes are slower and his defense is still terrible, that right hand is still a nuclear weapon. And Rahim's argument is simple but compelling. In heavyweight boxing, it only takes one punch to change everything. One perfectly timed right hand, and suddenly all the technical advantages, all the superior conditioning, all the better game planning goes out the window. That's what keeps this matchup interesting despite all the legitimate criticisms. For Usyk, it's a chance to face a recognizable name and prove he can handle the most dangerous puncher in the division's recent history. For Wilder, it's a massive payday and potentially his last opportunity to remind the world why they used to fear him. And for fans, it's the ultimate clash of styles. Pure technical brilliance against raw, devastating power. Rahim emphasized that sometimes boxing isn't about matching up the most deserving contenders. Sometimes it's about giving legends one final moment on the biggest stage possible, win or lose.
Squad, one night, one right hand, get your confidence back, get in there and do what you do best the way that you do it and see if it's enough. Because the one thing that we don't necessarily know about Usyk is if he could take a classic peak Wilder right hand. Well, everything else from Wilder may have been faded or shot. The power is the last to go.
The last thing to go.
Confidence, and he can land it. You might see just one classic Deontay Wilder right hand. And are any of us prepared to say that if that lands clean on Usyk, it doesn't ghost him? I'm not prepared to say that. I'm not sure Usyk can take that peak Wilder right hand. It's going to be difficult to land. I know all the stuff, which is why, you know, it's very difficult to bet on Wilder in this fight. But I love him getting the opportunity. It's a voluntary defense. I'm here for it. And I don't even blame Usyk for doing it. Everybody who's in line, they just got to wait one more.
Simon Jordan absolutely destroyed that entire line of thinking with his typically blunt assessment. According to Jordan, being champion isn't just about holding belts. It comes with responsibilities to the sport and to the fighters who have actually earned their opportunities. His argument cuts right to the heart of what's wrong with modern boxing politics. Champions shouldn't get to pick and choose opponents based on what sells or what's convenient. They should face whoever has legitimately worked their way to the front of the line. And right now, that's fighters like Ajit Kabil, not faded legends trading on past glory. Jordan's perspective is that if Usyk really wants to cement his legacy the right way, he needs to clean out the current generation of contenders systematically, not chase money fights against guys who might not even be top 10 anymore. The belt means you're the best, and the best fights whoever deserves the shot, period. No exceptions for big names or nostalgic matchups. Jordan sees Usyk's interest in Wilder as a fundamental misunderstanding of what being champion should mean.
Getting his opportunity to fight Alexander Usyk, because Usyk is a WBC belt holder. He shouldn't have the luxury of just swanning off and fighting Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder being given an opportunity that he isn't entitled to anymore.
Yeah,
because he's not current in terms of his performances.
Right.
Whereas Ajit Kabil is the WBC interim champion. He should be getting his opportunity in the same way that Usyk talked about the opportunities that were given to him when Anthony Joshua fought him back in the.
Frank Warren threw another wrench into the entire discussion by pointing out something crucial that everyone else seems to be missing. At the end of the day, this decision rests entirely with Usyk himself. Promoters can argue, fans can complain, and experts can analyze all they want, but Usyk holds all the cards here. And Warren made a fascinating point about Usyk's massive fan base in Germany. If Usyk wanted that fight, it would sell itself instantly because the support and momentum are already there. But Warren also connected this to legacy building in a way that's hard to argue against. He believes Usyk's path should be about systematically clearing out the entire division properly, not taking shortcuts or choosing easier options. A fight against Kabil would mean something significant within the current heavyweight landscape. It would be about proving dominance against today's best contenders, not yesterday's biggest names. Warren painted a picture of Usyk as someone who should be focused on building an undeniable historical record, and that means facing every legitimate challenger who's earned their shot through current performance.
We'd love to make it, and we've had discussions, and we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, it's all going to be down to Usyk, and there are a lot of Ukrainians in Germany, so it'd be a massive sellout. I mean, we sold that show out. Ajit sold that show out in, I think it was less than a day. And the atmosphere was unbelievable. My son George, who was there, I couldn't go. I wasn't there because I'm still struggling with this bloody virus I've got. But my son George said it's the best atmosphere he's ever experienced at an event, as did a lot of people, experienced people who were out there, TV people from Queensbury. It was just an amazing atmosphere, and we know it'll go from strength to strength. But whatever happens, Ajit will fight again. probably in May or June. It'll be in a soccer stadium there. And I hope in the opposite corner will be Mr. Usyk.
Adam Catterall brought up the most important point that nobody else is talking about. If Usyk chooses to fight Wilder, the championship belts shouldn't be held hostage by that decision. There are other deserving fighters who have earned title shots and are sitting in limbo while rules get bent for popular matchups. Catterall's issue isn't necessarily with Usyk fighting Wilder as a spectacle. His problem is with the sanctioning bodies manipulating their own rules to facilitate fights that ignore legitimate contenders. Meanwhile, Pat Brown offered a more nuanced take, expressing surprise that Usyk would even mention Wilder given his recent performances, but acknowledging that dismissing Wilder entirely would be foolish. Brown's theory is particularly interesting. He thinks Usyk might be chasing big names from his own generation, fighters whose careers he followed and respected, rather than simply looking for the toughest technical challenge available. That would explain why a fight with Wilder still appeals to the champion despite all the obvious competitive disadvantages for the American. So here's what we're really looking at. This isn't just about two heavyweights fighting. This is about the future of boxing's merit system, about whether legends deserve farewell tour, and about what being champion actually means in 2024. Usyk represents technical perfection and current dominance. Wilder represents the old guard, faded but still dangerous, looking for one last moment of glory. The experts are split between respecting Wilder's contributions to the sport and demanding that Usyk face more deserving current contenders. And the money people are trying to figure out if anyone still believes Wilder can deliver a competitive fight worth the massive investment required. Here's my question for you. Should champions have the freedom to choose legacy fights against legends? Or should they be forced to face whoever's earned the next shot regardless of name recognition? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this debate is far from over. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button, subscribe for more boxing breakdowns, and hit that notification bell because this Usyk situation is about to get even more complicated. I'll see you in the next one. But here's what absolutely nobody is talking about, and it's the most crucial element of this entire controversy. The Saudi Arabian influence that's completely reshaping heavyweight boxing behind the scenes. Turki Alalshik and the Saudi boxing investment machine aren't just throwing money at random fights anymore. They're strategically building a heavyweight ecosystem where every major bout flows through their events, and guess what? Both Usyk and Wilder are already locked into that system. This isn't about traditional promotional politics or sanctioning body drama. This is about a completely new power structure that's making these legacy fights happen regardless of what boxing purists think they should happen. And the numbers are absolutely staggering when you break down what Saudi backing means for this potential matchup. We're talking about guaranteed purses that dwarf anything either fighter could make through traditional promotional channels. Usyk could potentially earn more fighting Wilder in Riyadh than he made becoming undisputed champion. Wilder could secure generational wealth from one fight, win or lose. That changes everything about how we evaluate whether this fight makes sense. When you're guaranteed 8 figures just for showing up, suddenly the competitive arguments become secondary to the business reality. The Saudis aren't building their boxing reputation on close fights or sporting merit. They're building it on spectacle, star power, and global attention. A Usyk versus Wilder event delivers all three, regardless of who wins. Now here's where it gets really interesting from a strategic standpoint. Multiple sources close to Usyk's camp are suggesting this callout isn't random at all. It's part of a calculated plan to maximize his earning potential before potentially moving back down to cruiserweight or retiring altogether. Think about Usyk's age, his accomplishments, and his family situation. The man has literally nothing left to prove in boxing. He's undisputed at 2 weight classes, he's beaten every elite opponent put in front of him, and he's secured his place in boxing history forever. So why not cash in with the biggest possible fights while his name still carries maximum value? Fighting Wilder isn't about proving he's better than current contenders. It's about leveraging his championship status into life-changing money while he still can. But wait, because there's another layer to this that's even more fascinating. Industry insiders are whispering that this Wilder callout might be a negotiating tactic aimed at completely different opponents. By publicly expressing interest in fighting someone most experts consider a faded threat, Usyk might be forcing the hands of fighters like Anthony Joshua, Francis Ngannou, or even Tyson Fury to come to the table with better offers. It's classic championship leverage. You create urgency by threatening to give your next title shot to someone unexpected, which makes the fighters who actually want that opportunity suddenly much more willing to negotiate favorable terms. Usyk's team knows that Joshua versus Usyk sells itself worldwide, but by flirting with the Wilder fight, they're essentially telling Joshua's promoters that time is running out to make the bigger fight happen. Here's something that's absolutely crucial to understand about Wilder's current mindset, and it explains why he accepted this call-out so quickly. According to people close to his training camp, Deontay genuinely believes he's been fighting the wrong style of opponents recently. His argument privately is that technical boxers like Fury exposed his weaknesses, but he's convinced that Usyk's more aggressive, forward-moving style actually plays into his strengths better. Wilder's team thinks that Usyk's willingness to engage and trade shots, unlike Fury's constant movement and clinching, creates more opportunities for that right hand to land cleanly. Whether that's accurate or just dangerous delusion doesn't matter. What matters is that Wilder truly believes this stylistic matchup gives him a better chance than his recent fights did. That confidence, real or imagined, is what's driving his enthusiasm for making this happen. And here's where the international politics of boxing get really complicated. The Ukrainian versus American narrative writes itself, especially with everything happening in global politics right now. Usyk has become more than just a champion. He's a symbol of Ukrainian resilience and strength during an incredibly difficult time for his country. Meanwhile, Wilder represents American boxing tradition and the heavyweight legacy that traces back through generations of legendary fighters. The promotional machine practically builds itself around those storylines, regardless of current skill levels or deserving contenders. Television networks and streaming platforms see dollar signs when they imagine the marketing campaigns, the documentary content, and the international audience this fight could attract. Sometimes the biggest fights happen not because they're the most competitive, but because they represent something larger than just two athletes competing. But let's talk about what's really at stake for both fighters beyond just money and legacy. For Usyk, this represents a chance to add an American knockout artist to his resume, something that would silence critics who claim he's only faced European-style boxers during his heavyweight run. Beating Wilder convincingly would prove that his technical skills translate against every type of heavyweight threat, not just the opponents he's faced so far. For Wilder, this is potentially his last opportunity to prove that the devastating knockout artist who dominated the division for years is still somewhere inside that older, more damaged version of himself. One clean right hand against the undisputed champion, and suddenly, every recent loss becomes irrelevant. One perfect moment erases years of criticism and doubt. That's the kind of redemption narrative that makes for compelling television, even if the odds of it happening are relatively slim. Radio Rahim made another point that's worth considering about the timing of this entire situation. The heavyweight division is actually in a weird transitional period right now where the next generation of contenders hasn't fully emerged yet. Fighters like Cabil and Joyce are solid, but they're not exactly capturing mainstream imagination the way previous generations did. Meanwhile, the older generation of stars like Wilder, Joshua, and even Fury are all question marks at this stage of their careers. So maybe Usyk fighting Wilder makes sense not because it's the most deserving matchup, but because it's the most interesting available option while we wait for genuinely exciting new contenders to develop. Sometimes champions have to work with the landscape they're given, not the perfect competitive environment they might prefer. And right now, that landscape includes a lot of faded legends and unproven prospects, without much in between. Here's what makes this whole controversy even more complex. The fan reaction has been completely split along generational lines, and that tells us something important about where boxing is headed as a sport. Older fans who remember Wilder's prime are generally against this fight, seeing it as potentially exploitative of a fighter who's clearly past his best. They want meritocracy, they want the most deserving contenders getting opportunities, and they're frustrated by the constant bending of rules for popular matchups. But younger fans, especially those who consume boxing primarily through social media and highlight reels, are absolutely here for the spectacle regardless of current form. They see two big names, they remember the excitement Wilder used to bring, and they're not particularly concerned about whether he deserves the shot based on recent performance. That generational divide reflects broader changes in how combat sports are marketed and consumed in the streaming era. Simon Jordan's criticism goes even deeper when you really analyze what he's saying about championship responsibilities. His argument isn't just about Wilder specifically. It's about a systematic problem where titles become promotional tools rather than symbols of being the best fighter in the division. According to Jordan's philosophy, being champion means you have an obligation to face whoever has legitimately earned the next opportunity, period. No exceptions for big names, no special consideration for past accomplishments, no bending of rules because a fight sells better. The championship should mean something beyond just marketing value. It should represent a commitment to proving you're better than every legitimate challenger who's worked their way to the front of the line through actual performance. Jordan sees Usyk's interest in Wilder as part of a broader erosion of what championships used to represent in boxing, and he's genuinely concerned about where that trend leads the sport long-term. But Frank Warren's counter-argument touches on something that's hard to dismiss about the modern boxing business. Champions who stick strictly to mandatory challengers and deserving contenders often find themselves making significantly less money and getting significantly less mainstream attention than champions who take calculated risks on bigger names. Warren's point is that Usyk has already proven himself against legitimate competition. He's beaten everyone who was considered elite when he moved up to heavyweight. So maybe now he's earned the right to choose fights based on factors beyond just rankings and mandatories. Maybe after accomplishing everything possible in terms of sporting achievement, a champion should be allowed to prioritize financial security and legacy building over satisfying every critic who wants perfect meritocracy. Warren sees this as Usyk making smart business decisions during the prime earning years of his career, not abandoning his responsibilities as champion. And here's the wild card that nobody's really talking about yet. What happens if this fight actually gets made and Wilder somehow, against all odds, lands that right hand and knocks out Usyk? The entire heavyweight division would be thrown into complete chaos overnight. Suddenly you'd have a new champion who most people considered washed up, holding all the belts that Usyk worked years to collect. The mandatory challengers would still be there, but now they'd be facing a completely different stylistic challenge. The Saudi investment in heavyweight boxing would be validated in the most dramatic way possible. And every expert who predicted easy work for Usyk would have to completely recalibrate their understanding of where these fighters actually stand in 2024. That small but real possibility of a massive upset might be exactly what makes this fight compelling, despite all the legitimate criticisms about competitive balance and deserving contenders.